So most of us think we know the story of Peter's denial, right? But what if it's not just a simple story about loyalty and failure? What if it's actually a deep psychological case study of what happens when the ideal we have of ourselves, the hero in our own story, just completely collides with the brutal reality of who we are under pressure?
To really get this, we have to start in the middle of the chaos. Seriously, forget any kind of slow-motion, dramatic movie scene you might be picturing. From Peter's point of view, the whole night was just a mess. Imagine it. Bobbing torches, people shouting over each other, pure, raw adrenaline. It's totally disorienting. And it's right there, in that confusion, that the carefully built idea of himself starts to come apart.
See, before all that chaos, Peter had this very clear story he told himself. He'd been rehearsing it for months, maybe even years. It was a story about who he was at his core, about his unwavering, absolute loyalty.
And what's so fascinating here is that this wasn't just some vague hope he had for himself. No, this was his identity. He was the rock. He was the brave one, the loyal one, the guy who would never, ever break. This was the absolute foundation of who he believed himself to be.
And then, that rehearsed story just slams headfirst into reality. In the garden, surrounded by guards, his body moves before his brain can even catch up. The sword comes out in this flash of violence, a desperate, instinctual attempt to finally play the part he wrote for himself. This is it. This is supposed to be his big, heroic moment.
But then comes the collision. His big, heroic plan of violent defense is immediately and publicly shut down. No more of this. And right there, that's the first major crack in his self-concept. The story he was trying to live out was just rejected, flat out, by the very person he was trying to protect.
So as he follows the guards, he's keeping his distance, and it's so important to understand this isn't just simple cowardice. It's something more complex, something psychologists might call conflicted attachment. His body is literally making a compromise. His devotion is pulling him forward, but the very real threat to his life is pushing him back. He is caught between these two powerful opposing forces.
Okay, so let's move to the courtyard. You have to picture the scene. A fire is crackling in the middle of this dark space. Soldiers are leaning on their spears. People are moving around, watching everyone. The air is just thick with tension, and Peter is doing everything he can to just blend in, to become invisible.
The first challenge comes from a servant girl. It's not even an aggressive accusation. It's just an observation. Hey, you were with him. And Peter's response? It's pure reflex. It's not a thought-out lie. It's an instinctual retreat into safety. The words, "Woman, I don't know him," just fall out of his mouth. A little while later, someone else points him out. Now the pressure is building. And notice how his response gets shorter, sharper. "Man, I am not." There's no explanation this time, no story, just a raw, defensive denial. He's retreating even further from that identity he held so dear. And then, the third time. This one's different. They've noticed his accent. He's a Galilean. The trap just snaps shut. There is nowhere left to hide, and total, hot fear takes over. Loyalty? That's gone. This is pure survival mode. He starts swearing an oath, just desperately trying to sever any possible connection.
And in that moment, with those final words, it is over. The entire narrative he had built his life on, the brave one, the loyal one, the rock, it all just completely disintegrates. Poof, gone.
And then comes a sound, but it's not a divine thunderclap or some big sign from the heavens. It's something utterly, completely ordinary. A rooster crowing. Just a normal sound that cuts right through the noise and the fog in his mind.
You can think of it as a pattern break. For the last hour, Peter has basically been in a dissociative state, right? He's running on pure survival instinct. This sudden, normal sound pierces through all of that and just yanks him back into his own body, back into the present moment. And right at that exact same moment, the story goes that Jesus turns and looks directly at him. It's that combination, the everyday sound and that silent look, that triggers everything. The memory of his own promise comes flooding back, and with it, the full, crushing weight of what he's just done. Now, what Peter feels next is usually just called guilt, or maybe remorse, but if you look closer, it seems to be something much deeper, something more fundamental than just feeling bad for what he did. And this is the absolute key to the whole thing: grief for a self.
He isn't just mourning his actions, he is mourning who he thought he was. It's the grief for that lost identity, for that heroic version of himself that died right there in the courtyard next to the fire.
And that's why the weeping is described as bitter. This isn't a few quiet tears of regret. This is the uncontrollable sobbing collapse of a nervous system that just cannot hold the lie together anymore. It's the physical proof of his entire self-concept just shattering into a million pieces.
So he staggers out into the darkness, completely and utterly alone. And this part is so important. The world doesn't stop for his personal apocalypse. The trial keeps going, the soldiers are still on guard, his entire internal world collapses, and the outside world just keeps moving on without him.
And that's where we leave him. He survived the night physically, but the Peter who walked into that courtyard, that confident, loyal, unbreakable rock, he ceased to exist. That man is gone forever.
And that leaves us with this huge question, one that connects this ancient story directly to all of our lives. When our own rehearsed stories about ourselves fail, when we discover in a moment of crisis that we aren't the person we thought we were, what gets built in that raw, empty space that's left behind?